Revealed. 6 sinister childhood trauma stories that haunt the unexplained and cursed forever. The night swallowed Maplewood whole, darkness wrapping around the neat little houses like a suffocating shroud. Claire sat nervously at the kitchen table, battered coffee cup in hand, as a shiver raced down her spine. The unease gripping her once quiet suburban neighborhood had begun with her children. Lila had suddenly made a new friend, one named Bella, who loved to play games in the playground. The old, abandoned one that haunted the edge of town. Jake, her once vibrant little boy, clung to her side, eyes darting anxiously toward the windows, as if expecting a shadow to leap out and snatch him away. She couldn't shake the feeling there was something deeply unsettling in the air, like electricity before a storm. Underneath the well-manicured lawns and perfect picket fences lay a festering nightmare and echoing laughter in the night that sent cold sweats trickling down her back, clawing at her sanity. When Claire brushed off Lila's imaginative tales about Bella's invitations to the playground, she didn't realize the darkness creeping closer. "Just one more game," Lila pleaded, her eyes glimmering with a wild excitement that both thrilled and terrified Claire. It wasn't just make-believe. Lila's smile seemed sinister, and Jake's incessant trembling was starting to gnaw at Claire's insides. She recalled the elderly widow, Mrs. Craven, who had appeared at their doorstep with furrowed brows and trembling hands. "The playground, it devours the innocent," she had warned, eyes wide and frantic. Claire had dismissed her, creating a chasm between herself and the woman's haunting words. But even as she fought to uphold a semblance of normalcy, she couldn't ignore the whispers behind her as she walked through the neighborhood, the cold glares from neighbors who once welcomed her with open arms. Hours trudged on, each dragging heavier than the last, and her children slipped further into tales spun from shadows. The nights turned frayed, Lila waking with panicked cries and Jake's tears falling fresh as he cried about the girl in the woods. They spoke in hushed tones, comforted by imaginary friends, trapped in a narrative of unknown horrors. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then one evening as Claire tucked them into bed, the air grew thick with tension. From outside, faint laughter crept between the shadows. It rattled in her bones, rippling with a malevolence that twisted the very walls of their home. She could swear she heard a whisper, "Bring them to me or lose them forever." For the first time, panic seized her heart. As she raced down the hall, her breath hitched as dread pressed against her chest. Was Bella real? Was she someone her children should know? The laughter became a rhythm, a call to a darkness she could no longer ignore. The truth began to unravel, forcing Claire to confront the lurking terror. In the attic, an old newspaper article lay waiting, revealing horrors of an endless past that twisted through her family, tying her to the darkness. Standing at the precipice of despair, Claire could no longer discern friend from foe. The playground's curse taunted her. Could it truly claim her children? The answer danced on the wind, closer than ever. Claire stood frozen, her heart racing as she clutched the article tightly between trembling fingers. Dread filled her, thick and suffocating. The musty attic smelled of decay and forgotten memories. She stepped back, desperate to breathe, to think, but the implications of what she read clawed at her mind like a haunted echo. Flashes of her childhood flickered through her head. She remembered playing in that very playground, long before it was abandoned, long before the rumors swirled about its sinister charm. Children had vanished, whispered to have wandered too far into the woods beyond. No one had found them, just laughter that faded like smoke. And now, that laughter beckoned her children away. "Lila! Jake!" she screamed, surging down the stairs. The house felt like a labyrinth, and panic turned every shadow into a specter. The whispers seemed to close in, a dark chorus that filled the air. "Bring them to me." As she reached the kids' room, a swirling mist of terror wrapped around her. She pushed the door open, heart pounding, and collapsed to her knees. But they weren't there. The beds were empty, their blankets tossed aside. A chill raced up her spine. Lila! Jake! She stumbled to the window, throwing it open, a desperate scream escaping her lips. Outside, the moon glowed like a cold eye, reflecting the playground in the distance, a beacon of cursed delight. In the flickering twilight, Lila and Jake stood hand in hand, staring into the darkness with vacant eyes. As if entranced, her heart dropped. "What are you doing?" Claire breathed, horror clawing at her throat. Before they could respond, the haunting laughter erupted again, clearer this time. It echoed through the night, an invitation, a taunt. "Mommy!" Lila called, her voice detached, almost melodic. "We're just playing. Bella wants us to come. Don't move. Stay right there." Claire's voice cracked, fear coursing through her. She dashed outside, the grass damp under her feet, her senses sharpened by panic. She could feel something lurking in the dark, wrapping around her children like vines. "Lila, come back!" Claire shouted, lunging toward them. But the ground beneath her seemed to shift, pulling her back, a powerful force rooting her to the spot. Suddenly, she heard a rustle, not from her children, but from behind the nearby shrubs. A figure emerged, gliding forward, shrouded in darkness with eyes like pinpricks of silver light. Claire's breath hitched as the figure approached. "Bella?" The name slipped from her lips, full of dread. The spectral child smiled, a grin that sent ice shooting through Claire's veins. "I've been waiting. They want to come and play forever." As if under a spell, Lila and Jake swayed closer to Bella, their innocent faces illuminated by an ominous glow. Claire's motherly instincts flared to life. "Get away from them!" she screamed, unleashing every ounce of courage she had left against the black magic that tugged at her family. And just then, the ground trembled. The laughter rose to a crescendo, echoing through the trees, shaking leaves from their branches like brittle memories. Claire felt herself pulled forward, inch by agonizing inch, as Bella's eyes shone with an unnatural hunger. "Mommy! Don't!" Lila cried, but it was too late. In that moment, Claire realized the playground wasn't just a place. It was a sentient entity, a chasm of lost souls waiting for new ones to claim. She was caught in a web of their making, and the festering darkness longed to wrap around her children like a noose. She took a step back, fear transforming into resolve. "I won't let you take them," she yelled with all her might, but the laughter grew louder, the ground trembling beneath her feet. In the rising chaos, she saw the shadows dance around Bella, their forms twisting like smoke. She knew she had to act, and fast. With the force of desperation, she lunged toward her children, fear transforming into something fierce and protective. But in that frantic moment, another whisper, cold and seductive, slithered into her ear. "The playground is hungry, and it won't stop until it feeds." The atmosphere crackled with fear and anticipation. She could either lose her children forever or enter the depths of horror herself. What would that choice mean for their future? The laughter pulsed again, lingering in the air, taunting her. Claire felt the pull, dark and insistent. Would she dare to step into the abyss, knowing it could either be their salvation or their demise? Claire lunged, her heart a drum of terror and determination. As her feet pounded against the grass, an unseen force gripped her like a vice, roots unseen twisting around her ankles, dragging her back. The laughter, once a playful tease, morphed into a terrifying chorus, thick with malice. "Lila! Jake!" she shouted, her voice splintering under the weight of impending horror. The darkness around her felt alive, pulsating with a hunger that was suffocating, pressing against her chest. Bella's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting a twisted glimmer of something ancient and evil. "Come play," Bella called, her voice almost sweet, laced with the promise of forever. "You can join us." The air crackled as Claire fought against the growing dread, the realization carving deeper into her bones. Bella wasn't just a child. She was more like a siren, luring unsuspecting souls into the playground's dark embrace. Lila and Jake were not just standing there. They were being summoned. No! Claire screamed. A raw scream filled with a mother's terror. She focused on her children, willing them to break free from the enchantment. Get away from her! Suddenly, the ground surged upward, and the shadows morphed into tendrils, reaching for her, clawing at the edges of her resolve. Snapping branches echoed in the air, like ominous laughter mocking her desperation. In a final act of defiance, Claire forced herself forward, willing her legs to power through the invisible chains. The laughter rose again, a cacophony of despair that rattled her bones. "Mommy!" Lila cried, eyes wide, frantically waving. But Jake stood still, staring blankly, like the light in his eyes had been snuffed out. Panic shot through Claire like ice water. She was losing them. "Look at me!" she shouted, fighting the encroaching darkness. "Remember our stories? Remember the games we played? This isn't a game." For a moment, it felt as though time had stopped. Bella's smile faltered, overshadowed briefly by confusion. That crack, however slight, was all Claire needed. "Lila!" She stretched her arm, willing the connection through the darkness. "Do you hear me?" Lila's expression flickered. "Mommy?" she whispered, as if fighting through a fog. But just then, the shadows lunged, snatching at Claire's limbs, trying to sever that fragile thread. "Let them go!" Claire yelled, feeling something sharp against her throat. Defiant, she forced the words out, immersing herself in love, refusing to succumb to darkness. "You don't own them. You never will." The ground shook violently. The entity around Bella howled in rage, its sinister form shuddering with fury. Fissures cracked the earth, and for an instant, Claire felt herself rising, lifted by her vow to protect. "Mom! Help!" Lila shouted. The light in her daughter's eyes flickered, but Claire saw it, a glimmer of hope battling the shadows that threatened to ensnare her children. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for their souls. "Fill your hearts with love," Claire called out urgently. "Remember who you are. Fight back." But the laughter roared, drowning her words in darkness. The shadows twisted fiercely, swirling around Claire and her children, each laugh breaking like thunder. Suddenly, something emerged from the undergrowth, a glimmer, a flash of color in the black. The chime of a child's laughter broke through, sweet, innocent and free. "Mommy, we don't want to play anymore," Jake finally cried, stepping forward as if waking from a horrible dream. The moment hung in the air, heavy with tension. Would they break free? Claire's blood ran cold with uncertainty. Lila, too, stepped back, confusion clouding her innocent face. As if in response to their hesitation, the darkness surged forward, more desperate, as the playground wailed a primal song of despair. Claire reached out, fingers brushing Lila's. The touch felt electric, their bond pulsing against the inky shadows. But then, without warning, a shadow lunged, wrapping around them like a serpent, pulling Lila and Jake back. "No!" Claire screamed as she fell to her knees, a despairing cry echoing into the night. With every ounce of strength, she pressed against the unrelenting darkness, determination thrumming in her veins. But the playground laughed, a twisted, victorious sound echoing all around. Claire's heart sank. This battle wasn't over, not yet. She would fight. She would find a way, but at what cost? Was it too late to save them? Or would she be drawn into the darkness, never to return? The veil of night thickened, and Claire stood at the edge of an abyss, the mirage of hope flickering dangerously as the shadows stretched on, haunting her very soul. Claire's vision blurred, panic clawing at her throat. Darkness stretched like a hungry beast, its tendrils swirling, whispering promises of despair. She wrestled to stand, pulling against the weight of despair, the laughter enveloping her like a shroud. It dripped with malice, sliding through her ears, dampening her resolve. Desperately, she lunged again, but it felt like running in a dream, her feet stuck in invisible tar. Lila and Jake, she could see their silhouettes shivering, the light fading from their eyes. Would they even recognize her if she couldn't reach them? "Mommy!" Lila cried again, her voice trembling with fear. "Please!" Claire screamed, the desperation ripping through her. "Fight! Don't look at her! Don't listen!" The shadows seemed to respond, twisting with anger, rallying around Bella. With a jarring focus, Claire glanced at Bella's face. The girl's smile widened, revealing sharp, pointed teeth, each one glistening ominously. This was no innocent child. This was a warden of a deeper darkness, a collector of souls drawn to the void. "Join us," Bella called, her voice silky, taunting. "You'll be happier here." Claire felt a scream building in her chest, boiling over as she fought. She couldn't let fear eat away at her. Breathing deep, she willed her fears into words, each one a weapon against the gathering storm. "I love you," Claire cried, summoning every ounce of the warm memories that colored their past. "I will always love you." In that moment, Lila blinked, clarity flickering momentarily in her eyes, and Jake turned his head, the fog lifting. "Mom?" Jake called, a quaver of hope shining through his fear. "Mommy," I feel Lila began, only to be swallowed by the shadows trying to yank her back into the dark. "No," Claire shouted, rage coursing through her like fire. "Stay with me. Remember our games? Remember how we laugh?" The shadows tightened, squeezing around them like a vice. The air felt electric, the darkness pulsating as if it were alive and listening. Claire's heart raced. Would love be enough? "Fight back," she urged, voice breaking. "Do you remember the story of the bravest knight? The one who fought for his family?" The laughter subsided for a second, a ripple of confusion rippling through Bella's form. The shadows flinched back slightly, as if Claire had struck a nerve. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, a primal scream that shook the ground beneath their feet. The playground shuddered, debris flying into the air like angry spirits. "Enough!" The entity that wrapped around Bella boomed, resonating through the air with icy dread. In that moment, the shadows surged forward, a roaring wave of darkness aiming to drown Claire and her children. Something shifted in Claire. Fear was not an option. In a moment of clarity, she would not allow the shadows to snuff out the light of her love. With determination that surged through her bones, she ripped her thoughts back to the stories, the games that sustained them through starless nights. Remember your favorite story. Just think. Think of each other. Focus on love. The shadows hesitated again, clearly disturbed. Claire pressed, using the warmth of her heart as armor. "Lila, Jake, please, fight for each other. We can break free." Clarity in Jake's eyes ignited as if awakened by their buried love. "Mom, I can feel you," he shouted. "Hold on. Don't let go," Claire urged. But the darkness roared back, manifesting into a frenetic swirl, tornado-like, closing in on them. Just as Claire's strength started to wane, a shadow lunged at her. She could feel its cold breath on her skin, thick and malevolent, wrapping tightly around her throat. "Let them go," she rasped, desperate for breath, panic clawing at her. For the briefest moment, the shadows stammered, revealing cracks in their armor. And just then, Claire thought she heard a noise, a whisper threading through the laughter. It was a call, a familiar tune from a long-lost lullaby. The shadows froze, but the moment shattered as something massive and dark surged forward, its grip tightening around Claire. What was that song? What was it trying to tell her? In her heart, a glimmer of hope shone, yet fear pooled in the pit of her stomach. Could a lullaby really save them? Or was it merely another trap woven into the darkness? Every heartbeat echoed with questions. And as time spun wildly, Claire realized this fight wasn't just for survival. It was a battle for their very souls. Would love prevail against such ancient evil? Or would they all vanish, swallowed by the shadows, singing the lullaby of despair? Desperation swelled within her, urging Claire to fight not just for her children's lives, but to reclaim their light from the merciless abyss threatening to engulf them all. The shadows pulled at Claire, furious and relentless. Her breath came in ragged gasps as the coldness wrapped tighter around her throat. She could see Lila and Jake becoming mere shapes in the swirling darkness, their faces twisted in panic. Each moment spent in the shadow's grip felt like drowning. "Mommy, save us!" Lila's voice rang out, but it was lost to the gale of laughter that filled the air. The shadows surged again, their darkness threatening to overtake her entirely. Clara's resolve was the only barrier separating her from the abyss. With a surge of energy, she clutched onto the memories, letting them flood her mind, the warmth of their hugs, the sound of their laughter, the bedtime stories that had once brought them peace. "I remember," Claire screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're my brave knights. You protect each other." The shadows around her twisted and contorted, as if responding in disdain. "What's your love compared to the depths of eternity?" Bella's laughter echoed, her eyes glinting with malevolence. "Your stories mean nothing here." "Nothing?" Claire's heart pounded with determination. "Those stories are life. They've carried us through dark nights. Love is stronger than you." She could feel a spark igniting between them, a faint but persistent light, and in that instant, Lila's tiny frame flickered with a faint glow as she fought against the shadowy tendrils grasping at her. "Mom, I see you. Keep fighting. That's it. Push against it," Claire urged, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her insides. She focused on Lila, picturing the sparkle in her daughter's eyes when she played in the sun, the joy as they chased fireflies together. But then Jake gasped, his silhouette flickering dangerously close to the brink. "Can't hold on," he cried. Fear ruptured through Claire at the sound. She felt the shadows tighten their nooses around Jake, pulling him away from her. "No, Jake. Remember our camping trip? The stories we made by the fire? Keep that with you. You will find your way back," Claire shouted, surrendering to every ounce of love and memory she could summon. The shadows screeched, recoiling from Clara's words as if she had slashed them with a blade. Yet they quickly surged forward again. "Silence!" they boomed, and the very ground quaked. "I want to be silent," Claire shouted defiantly. "You don't own us. Not today." The lullaby she had heard before echoed in her neck, haunting and sweet. It wrapped around her like a thread, binding her to her children. The shadows halted once again, their form wavering, sensing the challenge in Claire's voice. And then she remembered her mother's song, the warmth of home, the merry tunes that held stories of resilience and courage. It pushed through the fear, igniting within her. "Lila, Jake, sing the song." Her voice vibrated with fervor. "No evil has power in the light. Together we can push through." Panic surged in the shadows as they surged against her. But Claire could feel the warmth of the children joining her. A tentative sound emerged, the beginnings of the lullaby, drifting softly from Lila's lips. Their voices wove together, each note a beam reaching through the dark. The shadows writhed, howling in agony as light burst forth, pushing back against the looming blackness. But horror still loomed. Just as clarity crept into Clara's mind, the ground shook, and the laughter turned to guttural, wretched screams. Bella's form twisted and morphed into something ungodly, her eyes burning like coals. "Your love is nothing but a whisper in the dark," the entity roared, piercing through the lullaby. It was right. Darkness loomed, threatening to silence them again. Claire's heart raced as the light flickered. "Fight, together. We are stronger than this." She clung to her children's voices, desperately intertwining them with her own. The shadows pulsed, fighting back against this newfound strength. Would it work? Were they really stronger together? Or was this merely the last desperate melody in a fading song? The darkness lurked closer, and Claire could feel its chilling breath ghosting her skin. Blood pumped in her ears. Time had become a blur, a tug-of-war between despair and hope. But she wouldn't falter. Not now. And then, she saw it, a sliver of light ahead, a possible escape. The shadows shrieked, drowning out her thoughts. Would it pull them to safety, or rip them apart? The final fight was upon them, but Claire's heart surged with the promise of love. The question hung heavily in the air. Could they cast out the darkness, or would it consume them whole? The shadows roared in fury, their screams a cacophony that burned Claire's ears. She clutched her children's voices, feeling the warmth of their love flickering like a candle in a hurricane. How could something so pure stand against this tide of malice? "Mom, it's getting colder," Lila whimpered, her small voice a lifeline in this raging storm. Claire turned to her, the glowing warmth emanating from Lila's frame now threatening to flicker out. Panic clawed at her throat, and she quickly scanned the growing darkness, searching for Jake's silhouette. "Jake, keep singing. Focus on our stories," Claire called, her words punctuated by the trembling vibration of the ground. "Remember the nights by the fire, the stars overhead? Hold on to that." The darkness surged like a wave, and just as quickly, the faintest flicker of light caught her eye. Lila was holding her own, a small beacon resisting the relentless pull of the shadows. But the fear on Jake's face grew as the grip of the darkness tightened around him. "Mom!" Jake cried out, his eyes wide in terror. I don't see anything. I can't know." "Don't let them take you. Think of the game we played last summer, the picnics in the park. The way we laughed when the ice cream fell," Claire shouted, willing her memory to stretch out like a lifeline across the abyss. "You can find them. You can find me." The malevolence shot forth, tendrils of shadow lashing out in a fury, curling around Claire, and snaring her in their frigid grip. Weakness breeds despair, and despair is a banquet for the lost. Bella's twisted voice echoed, dripping with sinister delight. But Clara's heart hammered furiously as she pushed against the encroaching darkness. "Despair? No. We have joy, love. Our memories are stronger than you." Her voice boomed, reverberating like thunder through the void. Suddenly, the air crackled around them, a wave of energy illuminated their surroundings. Claire felt a surge of hope as her children's voices blended into a powerful chorus, weaving their shared warmth into the darkness. "Mom, we see you," Jake shouted, his voice suddenly stronger. "I remember." The shadows recoiled with a shriek, shriveling back as if stung. Their glee turned to contempt as they reformed, lunging forward again with ferocity. "You think you can resist us? You are nothing." Claire's heart sank. She could feel the shadows trying to cut her tether to her children, the rhythm of her pulse syncing with the haunting darkness. How could they break through this? The sliver of light grew dimmer, the shadows eager to consume it whole. And then, amid the chaos, a memory crystallized in Clara's mind, their family song, one her mother used to sing during hard times. She poured every ounce of her soul into the melody, pushing it out into the air like an anchor in a swirling storm. "We'll fight. We'll sing. Together." The lullaby leapt from her lips, soaring into the dark like a hymn, its notes piercing the haunting clouds surrounding them. The shadows shrieked like being scorched by fire, for the song battered their essence. Their form trembled, dark tendrils flickering violently, as Clara's voice cut through the din. "Fill the dark with our light." Lila and Jake joined in harmonizing, fighting their fears. The shadows twisted, howling louder, and in that madness, something strange began to unfold. Light seeped into the cracks, illuminated the edges of the blackness. It was a tentative glow, but it was there. Suddenly, Claire's heart seized. "Lila! Jake! Hold on!" she yelled, feeling the shadows begin to separate from them, each pulse of light pushing them further apart. But the shadows were reeling. They wouldn't give up easily. "No, you're nothing without us. You're lost." Bella spat, fury enveloping her as the darkness sought to hold its ground. Claire braced herself, heart racing. Could they push through? Could they hold on to the love that bound them, defying the void that threatened to swallow them whole? As the struggle intensified, something in the shadows shifted. A new darkness flickered, more menacing than before, pulsed with an energy that felt familiar. Claire's breath hitched. Could it be? "Mom," Jake whispered urgently, fear tainting his voice. "What is that?" A dread creeping up Claire's spine. She could only stare at the dark shadow rippling like a black flame in front of them. What other horrors awaited them in the depth of this night? And just when it felt like all hope might be lost, the flicker of an untold story seemed to rise up from the heart of the darkness. The shadow twisted, an ominous visage forming from the darkness. Clara's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage as she recognized the twisted shape. How could it not be? The silhouette mirrored her own reflection, but filled with hate and grief, contorted into something monstrous. No, she screamed, fighting against the tangle of shadows. You're not real. You're just a figment of my nightmares. But the energy pulsed with a familiarity that made her blood run cold. You may flee, but I will always follow, the shadow sneered, its voice a sickly echo of her own. Lila clutched her mother's leg, her tiny hand trembling. Mom, I'm scared. A fear Claire had buried long ago rose to the surface. The fear of failing her children, of watching them suffer like she did. With every beat of a heart that never truly healed, memories resurfaced, distant screams, darkened halls, echoing laughter that turned to cries. Stay with me, Claire shouted, her voice thick with desperation. The shadow lunged, tendrils reaching out to ensnare her, to pull her into the void, into the pain she thought long buried. Claire instinctively threw herself in front of her children, shielding them with her body. I won't let it take you. Not again. Flashes of memory roiled around her. The day she lost them. The day she was consumed by grief. They had been lost, and now they were here, so close, so warm. But the shadow, her shadow, grew angry, anguished. Did you think you could forget? Did you think escaping the past was possible? It hissed, booming through the storm with wicked delight. Claire felt herself being dragged backward, losing the pull of her children's warmth as darkness encroached. You brought us here, remember? No, you don't control me, she shrieked, the force of her own anger igniting a flicker of defiance deep within. The chilling laughter resonated through the void, but Claire pushed it aside. She had a choice. She was stronger than this darkness. She needed to believe it. Jake, Lila, sing, Claire commanded, her voice reverberating as the shadows whimpered in response. Sing with me. They didn't hesitate. Their voices, once fragile, now rang out boldly, filling the void with their family song. Each note pushed against the shadows, each line a shield against despair. Light flared briefly, illuminating the torment around them. Yet it wasn't enough. The darkness surged forward with an insatiable hunger, suffocating their song, drowning out their voices. Claire felt as if she was being torn apart, bits of her joy and sorrow scattered like dust. Then the ground trembled violently beneath them, and Claire stumbled. Hold on tight. She gripped her children close, her heartbeat the metronome of their growing fear. With a deafening roar, the immense shadow writhed, shifting into grotesque shapes, visions of losses that twisted Claire's insides. Voices echoed through the void, a blend of her past mistakes, failures, and fears. You will never escape your past. Stay together. Claire's voice surged with fierce conviction. An ember of courage ignited inside her. We fight for our future. We fight for our love. As if responding to her resolve, the children's voices soared higher, intertwining with hers, creating a brilliant light that split the dark. The shadows hissed and recoiled, but they were not gone. Their incessant whispering grew louder. You will be lost. You will be forgotten. Listen closely, Claire shouted through gritted teeth. We are not afraid. But even in that flicker of brilliance, Claire could see that something more profound resisted their unity, lurking just outside the glow. A larger shadow loomed, a dominating presence, darker and more sinister than before. It seemed to consume their light, slowly pulling it back into the abyss. Mom, Jake stammered, panic rising in his voice. What if we can't fight it? What if it really is stronger? The words hung in the air, pregnant with dread. Would they lose everything? Claire's gaze sharpened. Then we fight together, or we don't fight at all. And with that, a new determination surged, igniting every ounce of her being. But before they could solidify their intent, that darker shadow let out a grotesque wail, sounding a warning that chilled Claire to her core. A presence that pulsed with an undying hunger. And in that moment, just when she thought they might secede. A wave of anguish washed over Claire. It wasn't just a bleak night of shadows, it was a night full of their own demons, clawing from every corner. Claire, the voice echoed as if it originated from deep within the depths of her soul, chilling her blood. You cannot hide from what you truly are. The realization struck hard, and as the shadows clawed closer, she dimly understood something terrifying. There lay more to this horror, something she had yet to confront. What other truths awaited in the deep shadows? What nightmares remained unsung? The shadows throbbed, a twisted pulse beneath their feet that made Claire's stomach churn. She could feel the air grow thick, heavier than sorrow, wrapping around her in icy tendrils. Each breath became a battle, her chest tightening in panic, but she could not show weakness. Her children depended on her strength. "Mom?" Lila's small voice trembled, laced with fear and uncertainty. "What's happening?" Claire's heart twisted. She managed a strained smile, though it felt like a mask thinly painted over dread. "It's just the darkness trying to scare us. We won't let it win." Yet doubt seeped through her bravado. The deeper shadows around them seemed to ripple with an unsettling awareness, their whispers sharpening like knives. She could almost hear the laughter, taunting, mocking, dripping with the blood of her fears. "Well, you've brought them here." The shadow hissed from the depths, scratching at the fragile walls of Claire's resolve. "You've brought them right to me. You protect them, but can you save yourself?" A chill skittered down Claire's spine. The shadow twisted again, and she saw mirages of lost moments, fragmented images from her past. Her parents, screaming. Her brother, lost in the dark. Herself, small and vulnerable, shivering under an onslaught of terror. "No," she shouted, her voice rising. "That was then. You don't own me anymore." Searing pain lanced through her heart, an echo of grief she thought she had buried. Memories threatened to drown her, but she clamped down on the tide. "You're nothing but a lie." With a new urgency, Claire gripped her children tighter, feeling their warmth seep into her. "Sing again, please," she urged, and their voices hesitated before breaking into song once more, this time with greater desperation. The melody filled the thick darkness around them, glimmers of light igniting from within. The shadows writhed angrily, recoiling from the sound, but a creeping dread swept over Claire as the larger entity drew closer. It loomed over her family like a thunderous storm cloud, feeding on their fear. "You think your love is enough? You think you can just sing your way out of this?" Lila's voice quavered. "Mom, I don't want to lose you." The raw fear in her daughter's voice stung. Claire cast a glance at the darkness, and beneath the fear she felt a quiet fury blossom. "Then we won't lose each other," she declared fiercely. "Do you want to let this thing win?" "No," shouted Jake, a surge of defiance fueling his courage. Lila echoed him, her small voice gaining strength from her brothers as they sang. Their harmonies twisted together, and for a moment, the air glittered with light, illuminating a path through the encroaching black. But just as hope clawed its way into Claire's heart, the shadows shrieked, the sound vibrating through her bones with a force that shattered their song. The ground shook beneath them again, throwing Claire and her children back. This time, the shadows bore down heavier, thicker, an all-consuming weight that threatened to crush them under despair. "Foolish girl," the dark presence roared. "You think you can fight what you've created? You will be devoured." Panic surged through Claire like a tidal wave. "Stay focused. Do not look away." But it was getting harder to keep her own gaze steady. All around her, visions morphed, and the shadows reached out hungrily, whispering of her failures, of every wrong turn she had taken. A sudden flash drew her attention. Jake was faltering, nearly swept away by the dark. "Jake!" Claire screamed, lunging forward as fear morphed into pure adrenaline. In that breathless moment, Claire felt a crack beneath the surface, the darkness becoming a vortex, pulling at every ounce of her being. It was more than just shadows. It was regret, sadness, anguish, the very fabric of her soul unraveling. The weight of past trauma flooded back. Could she really save them? Could she face those demons long enough to pull herself together? The shadows laughed, their echoes thrumming in the air. You're nothing without your memories. Nothing but the ghost of who you lost. What do you want from us? Claire cried out, trembling, teetering on the edge of despair. Her voice was all that resonated in the shadows. Her children, the light of her life, was fading like the last rays of twilight. Then, the ground shook again, and the void revealed not just darkness, but an endless chasm, a yawning abyss tinted with glimpses of everything she had lost. Faces, laughter, hopes. In that moment of realization, an even darker thought emerged. Was there something worse that lay ahead? A deeper shadow, more dreadful than she had ever dared to confront? As tendrils of darkness reached for her once more, Claire understood if she didn't confront her deepest fears and regrets. Not just for herself but for her children. They wouldn't make it out alive. What lay on the other side of that abyss? What was waiting to be faced if they crossed the threshold into total darkness? The shadows surged, relentless, with claws hungry for despair. Claire's breath quickened, but she couldn't let them see her fear. The children remained close, their tiny hands trembling in hers, grounding her a beacon in the overwhelming darkness. "Mom!" Lila whimpered, her voice barely audible beneath the howling void. "What's happening?" Claire shot a glance at the abyss swirling beneath them. "It's trying to confuse us. Just hold on tight." But inside, she quaked. Each whisper carried fragments of her own failures, and she could feel them trying to pull her down. The memory of her mother's face, twisted in anguish, flickered like a dying flame in the recesses of her mind. Claire squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, pushing it away. "Don't look," she urged, shaking her head as if to clear it. Jake's voice broke through the chaos. "We can't just keep singing. We're losing it." He was right. The hopeful melody had shattered, replaced by a cacophony of despair that rattled her bones. As the darkness swelled, Claire felt a jagged edge pierce her heart. A storm of panic swirled. Was this all there was? "No, we need to confront it." Claire's words burst forth, a desperate assertion against the bounds of reality. "This darkness is made from my fears, from our past." With that declaration, she felt the ground beneath them tremble in response, as if the shadows recoiled at her acknowledgement. She spun around, focusing on the oppressive wave of darkness. "You don't scare me," the shadow chuckled, a deep rumble that sent icy fingers ripping down her spine. "You are your fear. You are lost in the echoes of your failure." Claire gritted her teeth. "That may be, but I will not allow it to swallow my children." Lila's grip tightened, and Jake stood firm, each of them drawing strength from their mother's resolve. The shadows deterred, swirling hesitantly for a moment, but not for long. They surged again, hungry for vulnerability. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake shouted as the oppressive atmosphere pulsated around them. "We fight. Together." As the darkness reached for them, Claire took a step forward, dragging her children along, their hearts pounding in sync with the ominous rhythm of the void. The depth of her past loomed behind her, a specter waiting to pounce, but she couldn't turn back. In a moment of clarity, Claire remembered an old song her mother used to sing, a lullaby that had always calmed her. She began to hum it, almost instinctively, a wavering note born from the depths of her heart. "Join me," she urged, squeezing the kids' hands. Through uncertain breaths, their voices joined hers, the melody fragile yet determined. In that moment, the air around them thickened with resilience, and the light sparked just beyond the edges of darkness. But the shadows bulged, infuriated, and as their voices soared, the dark presence swirled menacingly. "Foolish mortals," it screeched, resonating with disdain. "You think you can escape? There is nowhere to hide. You will fall into the depths." A shriek echoed as something in the shadows bubbled forth, writhing with malevolence. The darkness transformed before their eyes, a congealed mass of regret, jealousy, loss, and every haunting moment Claire had tried to bury. Her heart raced as a grotesque face emerged within the swirling chaos, a mirror of her own past struggles. "This is your making," it hissed, sharp and biting. Claire tightened her grip around her children. They were now in the center of the storm, each note from their song sinking into the encroaching shadows, yet struggling to hold the dark at bay. She knew they had to push deeper, to truly confront what lay beneath. But would the shadows relent? Was this entity truly a reflection of her deepest fears, or was it something far darker? As they sang louder, the ground trembled once again, and a sudden break opened before them, a rift leading into the heart of darkness itself. Could they plunge into the unknown and face what waited within? Could they unearth the shadows that haunted her? Just as she prepared to step through, the shrieking shadows wrapped around them, pulsing with rage. "You're too weak to face what's inside. You'll be lost forever." Clenching her jaw, Claire steadied herself for whatever lay ahead, but fear lurked at the edges of her heart. What would they find on the other side of this chasm? Would they emerge whole or be consumed by the very darkness that threatened to tear them apart? In that critical moment, the abyss beckoned. Would they find salvation, or would it all end here, where the light dared not tread? Claire's heart thundered as she stood at the precipice of the dark abyss, the swirling shadows beckoning with promises of despair. "Stick together," she shouted, her voice echoing through the chasm, drowning out the shadowy whispers clawing at her resolve. Lila squeezed her hand tightly, her tiny frame trembling. "Mom, are we really going in?" Clara's chest tightened as she knelt and looked into her daughter's eyes, filled with both fear and an unmistakable spark of bravery. "Yes, we are. But we are not alone. We will face this together." A sudden surge of warmth filled her heart as she glanced at Jake, who stood resolutely, his own fear morphing into determination. "Together," he echoed, his voice breaking through the dread like a ray of hope breaking through clouds. With their hands linked tightly, Claire took a deep breath, ready to plunge into the darkness. "On the count of 3, she said, her voice steady against the roar of the shadows. 1, 2, but before she could say 3, the shadowy vortex lunged at them with furious intensity, tendrils of darkness wrapping around her ankles like binding chains. "Your strength is weakness. You will be lost forever," a chorus of haunted voices howled. Clara's heart raced as she felt the suffocating grip tighten. "No." She took a deep breath, summoning her inner strength. "Remember our laughter, our love. Sing," she commanded, her voice rising above the clamor. The children, trembling yet united, began to hum the lullaby she loved, their voices weaving notes of courage into the fabric of despair. The shadows writhed, an enraged storm swirling around them. Claire pressed forward, pulling her children along, each step fueled by their harmonious song. "Believe, we are stronger than this darkness." With that, the abyss shuddered, flickering with splintered light as cracks formed in the oppressive void. The shadows twisted violently, cries of anguish erupting like a hurricane threatening to consume everything. But Claire knew their combined strength was their greatest weapon. "Fight back," she cried, the rhythm of their voices rising, spilling out hope between the cracks. "We belong to light. We harness joy. You do not own us." The darkness hesitated, its grip slackening as if unsure what to make of their defiance. Claire felt a momentary crack in the shadow's wrath, a flicker of possibility. "Lila, Jake, hold on." In that instant, she caught a glimpse of the playground, a flickering silhouette gleaming under the moonlight. The very place that had taunted and tormented them now appeared twisted, trembling as if sensing its imminent demise. This time, it wasn't a home for the lost, but a battlefield for their souls, a space that could either consume or release them. With renewed vigor, they pressed toward the brink of the abyss. Claire could feel the weight of the shadows attempting to pull them back, but the bond between them glowed brighter. The dark entity screeched, recoiling as the light began to expand, stretching farther than the shadows dared to reach. "Mom!" Jake gasped, eyes widening. "It's working." They pushed through the darkness, the light beginning to engulf them. The haunting laughter of Bella and the shadows dimmed, faltering under the weight of their unwavering love. The air crackled with energy as they plunged deeper. "Stay focused," Claire shouted, her heart swelling with conviction. "Visualize our family, our laughter, our love. Let those memories guide us." Then, as if propelled, a surge of light exploded from their joined hands, colliding with the darkness in a blinding flash. The shadows dissolved in the torrent of warmth and hope. Bella, once a figure of malice, wailed in desperation, her visage melting into the tempest swirling around them. "No, you will never escape," she screamed, but it was too late. The darkness splintered, folding in on itself, disintegrating like smoke caught in the wind. Shadows collapsed into nothingness as Claire and her children surged forward through the light, laughter intertwining with an echo that whispered freedom. With a final push, they burst through, tumbling onto soft grass. Disoriented but intact, they lay in a pile, gasping for the fresh air of their reality. The horror was behind them. The playground stood silent, consumed by the light. "Mom?" Lila sniffed, her small hand finding Claire's. "I'm here, my brave girl," Claire replied, pulling them close. "We did it." As dawn broke over Maplewood, the whispers faded, replaced with the sweet songs of morning birds. They had fought the shadows and emerged victorious, their love shielding them like an armor forged from hope. Claire looked at her children, golden light washing over them. "We'll never forget. We'll tell our stories and remind each other of our strength always." Lila and Jake smiled. The darkness finally lifted from their innocent eyes. With their spirits restored, they tingled with the promise of countless stories yet to be spun. As they rose and embraced the warmth of the morning, Claire finally felt the shadows lift from her soul. They had not just escaped the nightmare, they had triumphed over it. And as they turned to face their new day, the laughter that filled the air now carried no taint of fear, only the sweet, pure sound of a family reborn. Now, if you loved this wild ride of a story, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive tales waiting just for you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending, because I want to know what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is everything. Let us keep the adventure alive.